it's probably better to interview you full screen first.
Okay.
Let me just make sure that we're live. There, I think we're live now. Yes. Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year, and welcome to day 3 of Thriving in the Face of Cancer. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and every day for the next 28 days, I'll be talking to top doctors and other healthcare professionals, as well as people who have survived cancer, who will be giving you insights on how you too can thrive even in the face of cancer. Today's guest is Liz Curran. She's the co-director of Radical Remission Project, of the Radical Remission Project, and the co-founder of Health Navigators, which is a cancer wellness community. She is somebody who I've worked with personally, both taking her courses and as a health coach. Please welcome her to the show. Hi, Liz. How you doing?
Hello. So lovely to see you today. Thanks for having me. This is
Well,
going to be fun.
absolutely. Well, what people don't know, because obviously when you have 4,000 videos and when you go live every day for almost 5 years, people can't watch every show. But
Right.
you were actually on my show, but you weren't interviewed by me. We had people that had shows within my show, and Dr. Joan Iflin was one of them. And I don't even know if you talked about cancer that much on that interview.
I don't remember how much detail we went into. I'm sure we talked about radical remission, but probably it was more of a spin on just general wellness, more so than just specific to cancer, though that is the roots of radical remission.
Yeah, well, what was so interesting, and it was like just like it was so fortuitous because I had been diagnosed with cancer 2 months prior to you coming on the show, and I was not public about it yet. But you had talked about how you trained with Dr. Kelly Turner. And it's weird. I don't even know why, because I don't even read that much. But for whatever reason, when Kelly Turner's book came out years ago now, I bought it on audio. And actually, they didn't even have Audible back then. It was like a CD. And I just thought it was a really interesting book. And yet here I am today.
Right, right. Your intuition was guiding you. I mean, it's a great book. I think it's something that everybody can resonate with, cancer or otherwise. So, and the work that you do is so aligned with the work that she did that it doesn't surprise me that you found it.
Well, maybe you can tell people, and we'll have everything in the show notes if you want to work with Liz or one of her colleagues. But she really helped me because if you know my story, I did not get an oncologist for a year and a half, and I had to do something. And so, Liz, you were probably my first person in the cancer space that helped me. And Liz helped me with private sessions. I'm more of a one-on-one person than a group person, but I did 2 of her groups, and there was so much value in it that even before this, I said, you should really just come on my show and talk about the class because the class that I took with you, when we started getting into things like, planning like, what would our life be like if we knew we were going to, what would we do if we were going to know we were going to be dead at a certain amount of time? And I was thinking, well, everybody should do this. You don't wait till you have, like,
Yeah.
the kind of things you were teaching. I feel that people should not wait till they get cancer or another diagnosis to do the kind of exercises and the work that you do in your courses. And maybe now is a good time for you to tell people what is it you do, because there might be people out there that are unaware of the wonderful services you've offered. And I've referred several people now to your program that could be benefiting, because so many people I know, and I know a lot of people now with cancer and there's nothing wrong with doing conventional treatment because you're not telling people not to do that. But sometimes I feel if that's all you do, okay, what if it comes back? You have just so many other things that you offer. So talk about it.
Yes. Well, thank you, first of all, for honoring me with trusting me back then, because I know that was a really scary time for you. So I appreciate you connecting with me and staying with me all this time because you really have such a wonderful view on the holistic approach to life. And this, like you said, again, not against conventional medicine at all. We often speak to this as more of a integrative approach or even a complement, depending on how deeply people want to go. But ultimately, I am a trained radical remission health coach, and I also work for the Radical Remission Project as one of their co-directors. My business partner is Carla Mans-Giroux. She herself is a radical remission survivor. And together we have been working as the co-directors for the Radical Remission Project for a couple of years. And we also have a private practice where we do our coaching and our groups within the Health Navigators. And that's only because the Radical Remission Project does not actually offer workshops and coaching directly to the public. It's more training health coaches and continuing the research.
Yeah.
So
Well,
if
what
you'd
I
like, I
love
can pop up some
Yeah,
slides
absolutely, but
and
I just want to say what I loved
yeah.
about working with you is that, well, first of all, you were really positive, and there's nothing worse than going to a practitioner when you have cancer or really any disease that's just doom and gloom and giving you
Yeah.
statistics. That just is not helpful. But you were really positive, and you had so many great suggestions of things that I could do. Most of them, which I did, like starting a caring bridge or just things that I would never have known about because how do you know about these things unless somebody has worked with people like this? And also just the idea, and you're kind of like my integrative physician who I have now, where your whole thing is supporting people where they are with what they want to do, not with what you necessarily think is the best or they should do.
Right. Yeah. It's not a standard protocol for us, right? Everybody shows up with completely different needs and you needed to learn how to communicate with people a certain way and Caring Bridge was a good resource for you. But that's not even something that always comes up for me when I speak with people. And, doing this work, it's been about 5 years for me, actually over 5 years now doing this work. And in that time, every single person that I work with teaches me something or introduces me to a new resource. So I've over time just naturally collected this information. And, as you know me, I love to share resources and give people different ways of thinking about it. So I really think that this is something that's really helpful for everyone to learn about. It can be really hard for people to get motivated to make big changes without kind of a health scare or someone that they love having a health scare. I came to this work because my sister passed from breast cancer 10 years ago. And from that point forward, I really felt passionate about finding a holistic approach, right? That, find a way to utilize all the tools. And this is kind of what led me to do this work. So it's been an exciting time for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, talk about your work and especially those 10 healing factors, because to me,
Yes,
your healing factors are just kind of like the pillars of lifestyle medicine, plus a few more for good measure.
absolutely. And yeah, again, this is something everybody can find a takeaway from. And you know what? I'll take a moment, I'll share some slides just so that you can visually see what we have going on here. Um, that pulled up okay?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, great. Perfect. So just to start out, I'll give y'all a little bit of background on the Radical Remission story, how it came to be. Dr. Kelly Turner is the author of the book Radical Remission. And she, back in the early 2000s, was an oncology social worker. And she decided, after working with clients and just seeing the pains that her clients were going through with cancer, she really was compelled to do something to help them. And she heard the term spontaneous remission one day, and she didn't know what that was, which is someone who spontaneously heals from something, and in this case, cancer. So she went home and she started researching this guy that she heard about because she thought everybody should know him. He should be on the news. He's a miracle and everyone should know who he was. And what she found made her happy and mad because she found that he was not unique and he was one of over 1,000 cases that were in medical journals and that could be researched on what they did in their lifestyle. So over time, she has now interviewed or researched over 1,500 cases of those people who were considered a spontaneous remission. And what she found was that what they did was not spontaneous. So she decided to refer to them as radical remission survivors. And since over the past 15 years plus, actually it's probably closer to 20 years now, she traveled around the world and interviewed healers, people who were healing these spontaneous remissions and these radical remissions, and then through them was introduced to their patients and their clients, and they opened the door for her to meet with them. And over time, she did that. She dove into medical journals, looked at past cases from, in history, And what she found across all those cases was that there were 10 commonalities between all of them. And we call those our healing factors, the Radical Remission 10 Healing Factors. And they are outlined in two books, Radical Remission that came out in 2014, and then the book Radical Hope that came out in 2020, right before the pandemic. So most people have heard of Radical Remission, not so much publicity for Radical Hope because it came out in March of 2020, or I think April of 2020. So we were all a little busy that month. And so it didn't necessarily get the accolades it deserves because it's a phenomenal book. If you have read Radical Remission, it's very similar. The way the book is laid out, it talks about the main point that came up in Dr. Turner's research. It shares science, external science that supports it. And then it offers healing stories of people who use these factors in their own lives and their own healing. So they're very, very inspiring and hope-filled. And if you're looking for a little hope, Radical Hope may be the book for you. And as AJ mentioned, Radical Remission is not against conventional treatment. It is more of a complement. So we don't see this as a cure. We see this as things that you can do to make changes in your lifestyle, diagnosis or otherwise, to really enhance your quality of life and your longevity. So we see this as a hypothesis in future research. And just to give you the parameters of what our definition of what a radical remission is, we have three categories. So are the people who healed completely alternatively with no conventional treatment at all. They did a lot of alternative things. So we call those people those who sought conventional or alternative treatment. Then we have people who did standard of care, the conventional treatment, but it did not lead to remission and they were given no more options medically. So then they did try alternative treatments after that, which then did lead to a remission. And then after Radical Remission came out and the research continued, the integrative approach was introduced in Radical Hope. And that is to say that these are people who utilized both conventional and alternative treatments combined for an integrative approach. And the people that are in this book are specifically had diagnoses that led to remission with 25% chance, 25% 5-year survival rate. So not great odds at that point, and they still found remission. And so people always want to know, what did they do? So here are those 10 healing factors for you to check out. And interestingly, I think you'll notice that there are 4 categories, right? So there's no order of importance, something different for everybody. Everybody resonates with different things on their healing journey. And every client that I meet with will start with something completely different. So again, it's one of those things we really don't know what exactly how we're going to work with someone until we meet them. So these categories, you'll see the 4 categories. We have physical factors, which to no surprise, changing your diet, taking herbs and supplements through a licensed practitioner, and increasing your exercise and movement. Then we have spiritual factors, which are developing a spiritual connection and following your intuition. And that's one of my favorite ones to teach about because it's not something that typically comes up in, a medical appointment. You're not going to hear someone, a doctor tell you to check in with your intuition and see what your gut's telling you. But there's a lot of really cool science out there that really shines light on how our intuition is a part of our bodies and our cells are talking to us and helping guide us. So if that interests you, you can lean into our Radical Remission workshop, which we'll share a little bit more about. And then the really interesting ones that people really resonate with, the mental and emotional factors. And these are the things that really help, that are very accessible lifestyle changes that really deserve to be spotlighted in our lives, right? Having purpose, being empowered. And this one, the way we define empowerment is that you feel seen and heard by your medical team, that you are the CEO of your body, and that you get to decide exactly what types of doctors you work with, what kind of protocols you choose, ask questions, don't feel shy to inquire a little bit more. A lot of times people just get intimidated and just accept what's ever put on them. And this really allows people to feel empowered in their own care, taking control of their health, and increasing social support. As social creatures, we can't put a a value on the importance of having social connections. And then the two emotional factors, increasing positive emotions and releasing suppressed emotions. These two factors are very, very popular ones that people like to work on, especially the releasing suppressed emotions. Sometimes this is synonymous with releasing negative emotions, but what we really need to do is when things are difficult, which oftentimes in a cancer diagnosis, they are very difficult. It's kind of that we call it the roller coaster, right? The high highs and the low lows. And it's really important, whether you're in the high or the low, to really allow feel those emotions very mindfully, intentionally, and having them in the forefront for you to be able to see those emotions for what they are and allow them to work through your body. So if you're feeling stressed or scared or sad or mad, you want to be able to get that out, whether that's through dialogue with a therapist, whether that's doing some mindfulness activities or tapping or all kinds of different tools that there are for this factor. But it's really important to feel all of our emotions fully and allow them to move through the body so that they don't get stuck. And then increasing positive emotions too. Really, the power of positivity triggers a lot of what we call our happy hormones in our internal pharmacy in our brain. And it allows oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, endorphins to flood our systems. And that lowers our cortisol rate, which we don't want to have high cortisol because that's the stress response, the hormones that come with the stress response. So we really want to highlight those happy hormones. And we can access a lot of that through having a positive attitude, increasing positive emotions throughout every day. We say this one, and a lot of these are like muscles that need to be worked. So every day, starting with even 5 minutes a day and allowing ourselves to continue to grow and develop these factors in our lifestyle. And again, not all of these need to be addressed today. It's not something you need to start with all at once. Each one of these you pick the one that is most important for right now, and then you can slowly work your way through these 10 healing factors. So those are the 10 factors. And AJ, you have any questions? You want me to just keep going?
No, well, no, I mean, I'll see if the audience has any questions. I just have comments that it was so frustrating to me being diagnosed with cancer because I was doing so many of them already, but it was all the ones in that emotional realm, releasing suppressed emotions. And so that's what I'm working on. And anytime I had a question about like a practitioner, you had so many tools in your tool belt for just possible people that could help with that particular one.
Yeah, I mean, everybody needs to approach it their way, right? So some people want a therapist, other people want a shaman, and everything in between. So there's a lot of different ways and different things are going to resonate with different people. So it's making sure that there is a really strong library of resources for people to have. And again, it's as a coach, it's not my job to tell you what to do. It's more to kind of figure out what you need and help you figure out what your goals are. So with, these factors specifically, we often talk about, what is the one thing that you need to work on first? And in your case, obviously, when I met you, you had already nailed so many of these so solidly just in the lifestyle you have had that it really was about kind of tweaking those couple of really big ones for you. And other people might show up for a session and those factors are solid and they need to change their diet or they need to learn how to increase their social support. So there's, something different for everyone and the approach is so unique, which is why the one-on-one coaching is really helpful for people, specifically when they don't really know which one or, how to get started. And that's how we guide people through that workshop that you took. You talk about the programming that you took with us. That Radical Remission workshop is the initial workshop Dr. Turner created back when she first wrote the book in 2014. When Radical Remission came out, so many people wanted to know, okay, well, great. I'm glad we read the book. Now, how do I implement this into my own life? And for her to reach enough people all at once, she created workshops. And this workshop is still in practice today by our 100+ coaches around the world teaching this workshop and working with coaches. But the workshop itself really outlines these 10 factors. We spend an hour on each one at least, depending on the setting. In person, we tend to spend a little more time on some of them when we get to do retreats and in-person workshops. And online, we offer in my practice, we offer this as a 5-week workshop where we'll do 2 hours once a week so that people get a chance to really take in the information and put some of it in practice, and then come back the next week with questions that they may have around their own goals with this factor. And the beautiful thing about things like workshops and different activities that you've participated with us in group coaching and whatnot is if you have trouble with that social support factor, you're really going to get it um, when you're in these groups, because so many people come and really resonate with the space of life that people are in, and they want to be able to talk to someone that really understands what they're going through. So there's a lot to be gained from meeting with others that are on a similar healing journey. And we always call them our inspired thrivers, right? Our cancer thrivers that are inspired to live this radical remission lifestyle. And that's not something you can find at your local hospital support group, right? These aren't support groups. These are groups to promote lifestyle change and allow you to look ahead at your future and see what you want to make of it. And really, what are the steps you're going to need to take to get there?
Right. And you have a podcast where you interview some of these thrivers and survivors, right?
We do, yes. The Radical Remission Stories That Heal podcast. We came out just November of 2023, so a little over a year ago. And we do interviews with people who are considered radical remission survivors. And then we'll also interview practitioners who have witnessed at least 5 radical remissions in their practice. So lots of really cool experiences with some of the healers and great stories from the patients that come on and share their healing story, because they validate over and over again how much these 10 factors specifically really helped them find their way to healing.
Any long-term lung cancer survivors that you've interviewed?
Oh, well, we have over 70. I'd have to go back and take a look. But we definitely have in our community, I know that there's some late stage but thriving women with lung cancer. And what I like to really focus on in the practice, right, at Health Navigators, when we're actively working with people, is focusing on a lot of people have a stage 4 diagnosis that they may not find a true remission in the long run. They may find that this cancer is treated like a chronic illness. They find really solid medications that work for them. And, my business partner, Carla, very, very great story. Metastatic breast cancer so she had a breast cancer in her 30s, and then 10 years later got a metastatic diagnosis, and now she's 8 years out and no evidence of disease, which means that even if you do have cancer in your body, it's not progressing. So we all have cancer cells in our body, and it's just a matter of how active they are or if they're activated. So we want to do as many things as we can to keep them from being active. And so a lot of people, while their doctor won't give them that quote remission or cure, I should say that they may not give them the cure, but they will give them the remission. And the remission is something that could last a lifetime. It could last a few years. It could last 6 months. And people don't really know what that means for them. So quite frankly, most people are scared when they get that word, because then they want to stop time in that moment and stay there and do whatever they can to stay in that place. And that's where we'll also pick up a lot of people in our programs, because they want to learn what they can do to keep their healing where it is. So I lost track of the question you asked me.
Oh, if you had
Oh,
interviewed
yes, the lung
long-term.
cancer. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna get back to you on that. Nothing's coming top of mind, and I don't personally interview everybody. Carla does some of the interviews. So I wanna find someone for you, because we have some really incredible situations. I mean, I interviewed a woman, her story will come out in the next 6 weeks in this next season, but she had a diagnosis, I think it was kidney cancer, and her situation was so dire, they actually removed her organs and cleaned them and then put them back in her body. So it's a pretty impressive story, and the things that people go through, and quite frankly, the science and the medical, like conventional medicine can do is very, very amazing. The things that, in the right for the right person with the right moment and the right diagnosis, it can be really powerful. So it's being, again, following that intuition and being open to listening to your body and seeing if things are in alignment for that medical, protocol.
Here's a great question from TS. Can a person that has not been diagnosed with cancer take part in the program? And I think the answer, TS, is yes, because people had
Please.
support people in the program that didn't have cancer. They were still doing it.
Absolutely. Yep. And I'm actually one of those people. I don't have a cancer diagnosis. I have not had one, but I have a very strong family history. So I'm highly motivated to utilize these lifestyle changes. And I found this workshop to be so incredibly impactful for me on my health. And even today, if, we all go through stress, we all go through low points in life, and having these tools handy and knowing that they exist and knowing how to use them is incredibly powerful when you need them. We all need them at different points. And, we fall off track with our way of eating, and that can take us down a rabbit hole of stress and anxiety. So sometimes it's just tweaking our diet. Other times it's making sure our meditation practice is in place, or we don't know how to do that. So we need to learn. And so this workshop really takes a look at all of these factors. And because it came from cancer research, it is presented through that lens, but that does not mean that you need to have a diagnosis to participate.
Nice. And so your programs, how often do they run, for example, and how long are they? The
Sure.
workshops.
Yep. We always offer 5 weeks, 5 week workshops, and they are presented pretty much every month. We'll start one, whether it's an evening one or a daytime one. We'll alternate, every month or so. Gets a little quieter in the summertime, just because people are busy, but we'll usually offer something. And if it's not me and Carla, the Radical Remission team, there's usually somebody offering one somewhere in the world virtually. And if there isn't something available when you need it, we always ask that you please reach out, because we can certainly find someone to either work with you, or someone might be having a workshop that may not be posted on the Radical Remission website, but they might be like, oh yeah, I have a retreat going on in Kentucky or Connecticut. So in-person experiences are great if you can get your hands on one.
How does one become a radical remission coach like yourself if they want to? Because I heard from somebody that I knew because she was a plant-based cooking instructor and she said she got certified.
Yes, absolutely. So people who want to take the Radical Remission Coach training, the certification, either need to be a medical practitioner, so already have a license, or they can go through a health coaching program, and we have some that we recommend if they haven't gone through one before. But you need to be in a coaching program that has been vetted, well, for lack of a better term, by the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. That is NBHWC, National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. And they have a long list of coaching programs that are approved, and they are the national board. So you can sit after you take your coaching program, you can sit with the national board and take a certified test to become a national board certified coach. And those, after you participate in those coaching programs, you don't necessarily have to be board certified by the national board, but you have to take a board certified program. Then you can participate in the Radical Remission Coach training.
Nice. Let's see. I see a question. Have you noticed a big difference with healthy eating and remission?
Yes, I think it really depends on the person. If they've already had a healthy diet, they may need to tweak things. I mean, it depends. Oddly enough, if you dig into the research, certain diets are better for certain cancers. So broadly, much to the work you do, AJ, the the plant-based way is what came up predominantly in the research, but there are certain cancers, and there is a spin on that low high fat, low carb, that keto approach. And when I teach that, I always teach that to try to approach that with what we call ketotarian. So trying to be as plant-based as possible with that high fat, low carb approach. But again, it really depends on where that person was on their healing journey. If they're eating a standard American diet, right, that SAD diet, then diet change can be incredibly impactful. And really, that could be that missing link that really gets them into remission.
Okay, thank you. Mugus is asking, I really believe that healing from hurt and letting it go is so vital to beating my. Have you seen these in the radical remission stories?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is probably one of the predominant factors when people find healing emotionally, then they can, in fact, it allows a lot of the stress in their bodies just to settle, and it allows to make space for some of these other factors to come up. So yes, absolutely. Um, Working with those emotional factors really do have a huge impact, and we've lots of healing stories to back that up.
Does it depend on the person which healing factor is more difficult for people?
It really is specific to the person. Yeah, because, you know, I feel like a large percentage of people really focus on releasing suppressed emotions, but then there's people who come and they say, I don't understand how people can be positive. I really struggle with that. I don't know how to increase my positive emotions. And so then we'll work with that one specifically as opposed to, trying to release some of the more difficult emotions.
Yeah, that's you also have this membership for people, whether they take your classes or not, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. The Health Navigators has, so we're a cancer wellness community. We like to consider people that come into our program seeking wellness and health. So we have a membership that um, allows people to come to a handful of classes a month, maybe 5 or 6 classes over the course of a month. And it'll be Carla or myself or one of our Radical Remission coaches teaching different types of classes to allow people to build community, right? To really connect. And such a beautiful group of people that come together to share their experiences. And it's so powerful. I learn from people every single day.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
And you talked about some retreats. What are they? How long are they? Can everyone
Yeah.
go?
Yeah, everyone is welcome to the retreats. And I have to say, one thing I will say about our virtual retreats at the virtual ones that we do at Health Navigators, we always say if you want to bring your caregiver or your partner or someone that lives with you to help you learn these lifestyle changes to implement them, that is always free and welcome. So just if you're taking the virtual, the retreats, there's a little more overhead with lodging and food, so that's not always up to us. But we have a retreat in Connecticut, in Farmington, Connecticut, at the Bridge Center for Healing Arts in the beginning of March. And then we also always present annually at the Omega Institute in upstate New York, which is always wonderful. Those are both weekend workshops and usually go late Friday evening or a Friday afternoon for a start, and then they complete midday on Sunday. And then typically people will stay either on site or nearby. And we always prioritize healthy meals for people to be able to come and know that if they're gluten free or they're vegan or they're not able to accommodate allergies like at other places. Usually we can accommodate people that have very specific eating styles as we have these retreats. But yeah, so June will be at Omega. And then this year, we're excited. Carla and I will be actually heading to Art of Living Retreat Center in the fall. I think that'll be in mid-September. But if you want to check out, you can keep an eye on healthnavs.com to see events as they come forward for the retreats and radicalremission.com/events, I believe. Um, but radicalremission.com, you can always go to check out all of the different coaches and the offerings that they have.
Where is the Art of Living Center?
I believe it's in South Carolina.
Oh,
They'll
wow.
probably be mad at me if I say it wrong, but we just found out about it over the holiday, so we really need to dig in a little bit more and we'll get that up on our website in the next month or so.
Did you train personally with Dr. Kelly Turner?
I did. I did. Yeah. So she had a director of training that taught the majority of my personal training, but she did come and we got to meet her in person back in 2019 when we were in our training. And now I actually lead the training with my partner Carla, and Kelly usually pops in and does a day or two of the virtual training that we do now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Paul, who's watching live, said, my wife had B cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, attitude is definitely a big factor. And Liz, you strike me as a very upbeat and positive, optimistic person. Are those qualities that people that are struggling with cancer might want to try to adopt if possible?
Absolutely, yes. And one of the things that I think inspired the name of the book, Radical Hope, for Dr. Turner was she was so mad because what she heard in these interviews where the doctors would say, you're in remission, but they couldn't explain why. And they would say, please don't tell anyone in the waiting room that this is like, they would literally tell her that they were asked not to share because they didn't want to give false hope. And she just couldn't believe that. There's research, even if you want to go on PubMed.gov and look into research on hope, I bet you could find that there have been studies done by people to just exemplify the power of the positive attitude and positivity.
Yeah, and that's something that at least the oncologists I've been seeing seem to lack. And when I mentioned it to them, I remember she said something like, "Oh, well, that only happens in children."
Oh, well, good for the kids. We're glad that's happening for them, but it is, quite frankly, it's happening beautifully all around the world, every stage, every type of diagnosis. And can you imagine, let's say someone has a diagnosis and they're ultimately not going to be here much longer than 6 months. So if they're going to be miserable and sad and depressed for those 6 months, they're going to have a pretty terrible quality of life. But if they're surrounded by their loved ones and they're living, in alignment with who they are and they're positive and they stay focused, then they're going to have a really beautiful 6 months. So whether that's 6 months or 6 years or 60 years, let's have that positive attitude. Why not believe? There's no harm in it. It might be disappointing later, but wouldn't you rather be disappointed for a period of time than all of it?
Yeah,
Right?
well, that's the same thing I struggle with always with my anxiety is that I realize that I'm suffering in advance.
Right. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. And that's not uncommon. People do have a lot of fear of the unknown or fear of change or fear of what could be. And really, for me, staying very, very much in that place of mindfulness and trying to stay present and grounded is for me what in those cases for me when those happen, I really find those practices to be really helpful in snapping out of it.
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, you like I just saw I was referred to a book today and I'm trying to get the author on the show, but just the title it just made me feel so good. It was called Making Peace with Cancer.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about that one.
Absolutely. Well, that's what I like about you. You're open to learning more. I'm curious, in Dr. Turner's two books, there was one healing factor that was added later. And do you know the story of that and
I
why?
sure do. Yeah.
why
So in Radical Remission, there were only 9 healing factors that came out, and exercise was not one of them. And so after the book came out and she continued to do the research before she wrote Radical Hope, she found there was a lot of feedback from the radical remission survivors and the public saying, where's exercise? Where does that fall in here? So she dove back in and she really took a hard look. And what she realized was when people went home, a lot of the people that she interviewed went home on hospice and then found healing. So when they were talking about their experience, they were talking about that period of time when they first came home from and went on to hospice and were kind of homebound, even laying in bed, not moving at all. They weren't thinking of exercise as a way that they healed, right? It came because they were bedridden and then they were able to sit up a little bit. And then they were able to stand up a little bit. And then sometimes it was as simple as, realizing that they were able to walk around the dining room table or go out to the mailbox. So moving more than you did before is what we have kind of reframed it as physical movement and then exercise as you are able. So that factor came on strong when we did Radical Hope, when that book came out, and we started offering that in the workshop as well. And there's so much science around the power of exercise and the impact that it can really have on your health in general.
Yeah, well, like I say, these healing factors aren't just for people with cancer. I think they're for anybody who's a person.
Yes, yes, right. And the trick is really having the motivation and that kind of stick with itness enough to learn about it and then implement it. That's really the tricky part is being motivated enough to make the changes.
Yeah. Here's a question from a live viewer. from TS. Does this program have a section that specifically addresses the different medication side effects that some people might experience? Some doctors just prescribed and the human factor seems to be gone.
Yeah, I would say that probably comes up most frequently in our herbs and supplements factor, and empowerment. One, empowerment is your doctor's going to prescribe and expect you to take, and you are allowed to ask questions about what those things are going to do to your body, what are the side effects. And, I have clients who sometimes will say, well, do I have to do all of them? And then there might be an answer that's more specific to them. The standard of care is based on statistics of everybody that's had your diagnosis. So they're looking at it from a statistical place. So if there's plenty of people that are chemically sensitive that can't do chemotherapy. So if that is ruled out, then what? Right? So then what are those options? So there's ways of dialoguing with the right person that's the right doctor for you to really develop a team and a relationship. But when we talk about the herbs and supplements factor, this is the only factor that we say needs to be done through a licensed practitioner, someone who has been trained to prescribe herbs and supplements, because countless times people end up on a Facebook group for their diagnosis. Say they're in a breast cancer, group on, HER2 positive, or someone that's going to go into a Facebook group specifically on breast cancer drug. And then inevitably they end up having conversations about the drug and then what other things are they taking. Or they'll read a website and they'll say, oh, well, this person's website says everybody should take X if they have breast cancer. Well, that's not true. Every person has a very unique biology. Just like diet, everybody's herbs and supplements need to be specific to them. So it's really important that you get tested to see what your needs are. Somebody might say every person should take more vitamin D. While that is very likely, there might be someone out there that has more than they need. So they wouldn't benefit from taking a supplement like that. So, it's not the greatest example, but you get the point. There's so many things out there that we need to know are specific to our bodies. So we need that testing to showcase that. And there's a lot of different types of blood work that you can get done. I think were you the one that introduced me to Datar, the
Oh,
liquid
yeah,
biopsy?
yeah, he was on the show, Chad Bonafiglio,
Yeah.
Datar Genetics. Yeah, the liquid biopsy.
Yep. And so they have a lot of offerings, and there are other companies like them that can test you for chemosensitivity. Is this specific medicine going to work for you? And a lot of times people rush right in because they get the diagnosis, they're scared, they want it out, cut it off, burn it off, get rid of it, whatever it is. So they just immediately go forward with whatever the first person that they meet tells them to do. And I always recommend getting a second opinion. If you're going to get a second opinion, I highly recommend it be with an oncology naturopathic doctor so that you can get a different perspective, right? So an oncology naturopath takes as many years of school as an MD oncologist. It's just that they're doing it through the lens of plant medicine instead of pharmaceuticals. So they're going to have, and in my experience, they're very complementary to standard of care. So they're not going to tell you not to do those standard of care options. They're going to say, okay, well, if you're going to do this chemo, then I'm going to recommend these supplements to boost your immune system, help with digestion, help with this side effect, that side effect. So they're really a beautiful complement. So having two different perspectives is really helpful. And also having someone validate that the seriousness of your diagnosis does need this medicine. And so it's important to really feel confident and believe that the choice and the path that you're on is going to heal you. Because if all you do is worry and second guess, your body's going to feel that, and you're going to start with that stress response, that fight or flight mode, and you're going to have this cycle of not being able to be in the best place to receive the medicine.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions. Live viewers asking, if you had a health issue, would you likely use radical remission plus the standard of care at the same time, or would you take a different approach?
I would definitely consider standard of care for myself, but I would not rush into it. Like I said, I would take a really hard look at what's being asked. What is the diagnosis? How severe is it? How aggressive is it? How quickly is it moving? That is a big factor, how quickly something's progressing. If something's progressing quickly, then it's going to need a quicker treatment. If something is slow growing, you have time to do some research and really decide what practitioner. Maybe you don't love your oncologist personality. You have time to find someone that might have the same prescription, but have a different connection with you emotionally. That matters because a lot of times you're going to have a relationship with these people for a long time. So it's important that you feel they have your best interests at heart. So I would definitely consider all my options. I have a few oncology naturopaths that I really like and integrative MDs that I really like. And I believe that with the right people and the right team, you can make the best decision for your long term.
How do you find the right people, though? At least where I am, it's so hard to even change doctors if you're not happy. It
Yeah.
so long, and it's oh
It is
yeah.
hard. And it's like I don't know if you've had a lot of well, I think you've shared publicly that you have anxiety. So maybe you have had a therapist. So if you've had a therapist, like it's really hard to once you've poured all your emotions out to a therapist, if you want to change, it kind of feels like a waste, right? You've spent all this time getting to know them and sharing your deepest thoughts, and then you're not really getting anywhere, so you want to switch. Well, it kind of feels like that with an oncologist too, because you're so invested in your medical plan and your medical care that it's hard to just take it and go somewhere else. But people do it all the time. They get really fed up with not, being treated like a number or an inconvenience, or they don't feel like they're being rushed. They're not really getting to ask the questions they want to ask. So people do switch. It takes a lot of emotional energy to find the bandwidth to do that, but people do it.
Yeah. Nan, hi Nan, who's watching live, said that. Where did your comment go? About which she wrote a book and it's called Aging Powerfully. And she had a nice comment about, yes, that the book you're mentioning by Dr. Turner impressed her greatly when she was writing her own book. Yeah, it's a great book.
Awesome. Thank you.
A great book.
Yeah, it really was impactful for me. That's why as soon as I found out that there was a training, I was already a health coach for a few years, and I immediately just signed up. I said, you know what? I got to do this. I was compelled. Wasn't even a choice, really.
Janet wants to know, how does one search for a naturopathic oncologist? Is there a website?
There is, and it is, I can actually give it to you for the show notes.
Yeah.
There is an organization called, and it's ONCANP. So on camp is how I pronounce it. Oncology Association of Naturopathic Physicians. And
.com or
there,
.org? .com?
um,
Let me check.
I don't know for sure.
Nope, it's not .com. So
Is it?
okay, let's try .org.
Yeah, if it's not, let me know. It might be org. Yeah.
Yes, it
Is
is.
it?
On ONC, like onc for oncologists, ANP, ONCAP. Oh, I'll put it in the show notes and I'll
Yeah,
put it.
onc ANP is I think how they refer to it. I call it on camp because it makes it easier to remember. But yeah, that to be in that organization, you have an extremely high level of education. Everybody is very well equipped to handle. It is, I think, mostly American and possibly some Canadian, but lots and lots of options. You can go in, you can put in your area, your location. You can find people who are in your area. A lot of them do work virtually, and some of them can meet in person, but most of them are able to work. If they're based in Pennsylvania, they might still be able to work with you and, out on the West Coast. So uh, lots of flexibility there with naturopathic oncologists.
That's great. I think I'm having one on the show tomorrow. She might, I think that is what she is actually. I know she's an oncologist. So thanks. Some of the people are saying that when they themselves or their loved ones went through cancer treatment, their oncologists say, well, don't even change your diet, don't even bother. And that's one of the time and healing factors that it seems like most of the survivors did in some measure.
Yeah, it makes people so mad too, because obviously in the work that we do with the groups that we have, that you're dealing with a large amount of people that have been told the same thing. Oh, just go home, eat a brownie, have a margarita, relax, do what's going to make you happy, live your life. And they actually resent it because they do want some direction. And if someone is really asking that question, and this was a lot of what fired me up because my sister did ask, is there anything I could be doing to help my case? And there really wasn't a whole lot that they offered her. And I didn't know what I know now. I could help her in so many different ways now if she were still here. And so now I just work really hard to help other people that are in situations like hers to make sure that they just know that this exists.
Yeah. Well, as mentioned to Dr. William Lee yesterday, for me, having cancer is like doing a 1,000 piece jigsaw puzzle while all the pieces are white. And it's just like today I learned something new about this website for naturopathic oncologists. So, it's nobody really makes it easy for the patient. It's
I
like
know.
that's what I'm trying to do now by doing a show every day and, maybe even writing a book from my perspective. So,
Oh,
yeah.
I'd love that.
I'm glad you mentioned Datar genetics because it was so weird. Like my tissue biopsy was exactly the same as the liquid blood biopsy, but the liquid blood biopsy was not being accepted. It's
Wow. Well, maybe it will be. If we can change one doctor at a time, open their mind just a little bit, one doctor at a time, then eventually, it'll help make change because that doctor will go to their tumor board and they'll share the story. But I love that you have that evidence
Well, I
and
mean, it was the
validating.
difference, I'd had to pay out of pocket $2,200. And,
Yeah.
it was like they just said, no, no, got to have tissue biopsy. And I did, and it's
Yeah.
exactly the same. So why did you put me through that?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I did need the tissue biopsy to get if I wanted to get the genetic markers. But what I was trying to say is I couldn't get an oncologist without a biopsy. And I couldn't get a biopsy because it's like my story
Chicken
is
and the egg.
like you
Yeah.
can't get a show on Broadway till you get a show on Broadway kind of thing. So
Right.
when does your next workshop start if people want to enroll? And again, you don't have to have cancer. You don't even have to have a loved one to have cancer. It's just
Correct. Yes. Let me look really quick on my dates. I know we have one starting in January. It is it here?
yeah, I took one alone with you, and then I took one with you and Carla. And I actually had a friend in that one.
Yeah, we actually we have an information session. So if somebody just wants to learn a little bit more about each of the factors, they can come January 14th. There will be an information session. And then there's a workshop that begins on the 21st, and that is with my partner Carla. And then that she usually does stuff in the evenings, and I usually do stuff during the day. So if you're a daytime gal or guy and you want to check things out, February 10th, I will be beginning a workshop 1 o'clock Eastern time.
That's great. Right after the Super Bowl.
That's right. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, let's see. Here's an interesting question. When people have remissions, is it usually sudden or are they slower?
I've heard some really cool stories that have been fairly sudden. A lot of, we have a podcast episode. I don't know if you've met Anita Morjani, AJ.
I haven't
She,
met her, but I took a class with her when Louise Hay did a workshop in
oh yeah,
Pasadena called You Can Do It.
she's an incredible story of a near-death experience. And I also have, so she's on our podcast. And then there's someone else named Chuck Keels. Keels, and you might really enjoy showcasing him. He also had a spiritual experience while pending his cancer surgery. He was really kind of knocking on death's door. He was planning to move his kids back to live with his family across the country because he didn't know if he was going to make it. And he had a vision while he was in the hospital preparing for surgery. And within a month, he was in an unexplained remission. So, same with Anita Morjani. It was just a matter of time. She was healed and she did agree to do some chemotherapy because people didn't really believe that she was healed or that she would stay healed. And I mean, this was decades ago at this point where she's been
Yeah.
clinically cured, really. But yeah, sometimes it's fast, and some people, um, if they have a hormone-based cancer and they change their diet and they have the right medications, then they can find healing fairly quickly.
Yeah, well, we just need to get more of these stories out there because I have a
Absolutely.
friend right now, if you're watching, Love to Youth. I'm not going to say the person's name, but this person is stage 4. And Dr. Lee said yesterday, you can go from 4 to 0. It's possible.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yep.
We,
We
if
we
you
love
can't,
seeing that and we love sharing those stories, and I'm sure you will too.
If you like, Liz, after the show, maybe you could send me as clickable links, the link to the class, specifically the classes and the
Sure.
workshops, because it's easier for people to click links and I can't get them for you right
Absolutely.
now, but we will. There's a lot in the show notes already. You can start click.
Yes.
Okay, so here's the question from Skippy. My sister-in-law was told not to lose weight, yet she's overweight with stage 4 lung cancer, so healthy eating isn't on her mind. This is in the UK. Why do they not include healthy eating? That way they can have more customers. No, I don't know.
I don't understand. I think ultimately, if you ask any doctor and or med student, and I do work with some med students at in the hospital setting, um, they don't get a lot of nutrition education. And you might even know more about this too, AJ, with the work that you do. But I feel like I've heard anywhere from 15 hours to 90 hours of their entire med school training that they have in nutrition. When they're not, some people are inspired to, go down that path more specifically and learn about it, but the standard is not a whole lot of education, so it's not shown as a priority. And it really is crucial, especially with the world that we live in and how depleted our soil can be and how processed our foods can be and ultra processed foods that really can impact us on the cellular level so deeply. It's really important to prioritize eating healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one more question for you. Every guest on Thriving in the Face of Cancer series is getting this question. Liz, what message of hope would you share with somebody currently facing a cancer diagnosis?
I would say that you got to keep hope. Hope is so crucial that if you believe you can heal, you are going to feel so much more, so much healthier and so much better and have such a higher quality of life. If you succumb to the fear and you succumb to all of the elements that go with that, whether it be depression, whether it be lack of motivation, whether it just feeling sad but not working through it, your quality of life is going to be in the pits. But if you can stay positive and believe that you can heal and believe the medicine that you're taking is going to heal you and believe that the practitioner has your best interests at heart, you will find that your life is going to have high quality and you're going to find longevity.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz, and thanks for being there for me early and often.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm glad to have you in my life.
Oh, thank you. And thanks all of you for watching day 3 of Thriving in the Face of Cancer. I want you to know that wherever you are in your cancer journey, as long as you're still breathing, I believe there's still hope and that you too can thrive even in the face of cancer. Please tune in tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time for day 4 of Thriving in the Face of Cancer with Dr. Dawn Musalem. She is an oncologist who's also not only a survivor of cancer, but a heart transplant and one of the first people to run a marathon after getting a heart transplant. Thanks for watching. I'm Chef AJ, and may 2025